Greg and Julie Gorman, founders of Gorman Leadership, passionately empower others to discover God's fingerprint design for their life and assist married couples to discover their purpose that God has for the marriage. Their marriage is an example of strength, integrity, and a great model for embracing spiritual, emotional, and physical oneness in marriage. Good to have you with us today as we talk about two are better than one. First time here. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, we're excited.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. With our Prayer Line Center, one of the main calls that comes in has to do with relationships and marriages and, making things, quote unquote, work. And so how did you all get started in this and really sense God's leading to be a source of encouragement and strength to the married couples?
Yeah, so, we've been married almost 2 decades now. I think from the very beginning, we actually have worked with couples, ironically. And over the years, what we found is that people long for connection. They long to have a marriage relationship and a friendship. And we found ourselves in that role of giving not advice, but just kind of life principles and practices that worked.
Being there for people and listening and trying to use biblical principles to minister in our own marriage and help people understand and learn from some of our mistakes so they don't step in the same potholes sometimes.
What are some of the more common things you've seen or the common potholes you've seen people fall into or step into?
I think it's really easy for us as a married couple to get in the habit of picking each other apart and seeing all the negative things. We spend a lot of time together, and over time we get comfortable. And sometimes with that comfort, what happens is we really begin to kind of pick each other apart.
Yeah, a lot of me-focused instead of we-focused in relationship. And what we found is with problematic thinking, right? If you think about a couple and they're struggling, the very first thing that they want to do is they want to fix the problem. But if every thought leader is right, that you get what you think about, we say you gravitate towards what you contemplate. As King Solomon said, as a man thinks, so he is. And so if we constantly are focusing on the issues, the problems in our relationships, the problem with that is that the subject matter is the problem. And so we're very passionate about helping couples not live me-focused, but live we-focused. And of course, bringing God into the relationship, because God has a plan for each and every relationship.
So then how do you get couples to get off of the problem and go more onto the solution? I've heard one preacher say that marriages are made in heaven, but they have to be lived out here on earth. So how do you get them to veer from that and focus on a solution? Because I'm not married, as I told you at the top of the show, so I'm hungry for this information.
It really starts with, Stephen Covey said, begin with the end in mind. And so we like to think about it from what was God's perfect plan? What is His perfect plan for our marriage, right? And so when we think about our marriage from the standpoint of what is the desired result, then we move from this idea of solving problems to really working toward a positive result. And if it's true that all thought leaders have agreed, including King Solomon, that we become what we think about, we gravitate towards what we contemplate, right? Then it's really important that we're contemplating the right things. And when we become purpose-focused, then we're working together in unison towards something rather than spending all of our time in problem-focused thinking.
And the thing that's fun about it is that God has a plan for each and every one of us, right? He designed us distinctly on purpose for a purpose. And so what we try to do is help couples live into that passion, that purpose. It's not so much a to-do list that they need to accomplish or need to figure out. It's more a celebration of who they already are, and what could be more natural than that.
So just kind of moving out of that into maybe some specifics today, what were some of the things that y'all struggled with in your years? I'm sure they're early on, and you haven't had any issues in the last year.
Oh, no.
15 years or so. I found it always gets better and better.
Absolutely.
But what were some of the things that you struggled with or issues that you had to resolve or work through, and how did you do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. For us, we married after 6 months of courtship, and what
It was quick.
It was
That's quick, yeah.
Yeah, don't tell
Figured
our
I'd better act
don't-
quick, you
yeah,
know?
Yeah.
Don't tell your kids that.
Yeah, don't tell our
Right.
kids that. And so I had actually been married before. Greg had been married before. And I brought a lot of issues into the relationship, a lot of insecurities. And I think
Well, now I can't let you take full credit for all that. I think I brought some too. Go
That's
ahead, I'm
nice
sorry.
of you.
You know, I think it's what any couple would, though. It's really learning to, as you talked about earlier, communication and upbringings and expectations that we bring into the relationship that we're not even aware of. And so it was more of a competition, a comparing, a competing. It was me trying to change him until God told me to quit trying to be his Holy Spirit. That didn't work so well.
We spent a lot of time trying to fix each other. We really did.
Yeah.
And that just never works out, right? We've got to let God be God and us just do our part. And somebody said once that marriage is not about finding the right mate, it's about being the right mate.
Right.
And
That's
when we
great.
really embrace
That's a
that,
great way to put it.
it goes a long way, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So what we learned is that instead of comparing and competing, instead of trying to change one another, it was to celebrate those differences. And Greg uses an illustration in the book about iron sharpening iron. And the thing that allows iron to sharpen iron is the differences. It's the friction of one blade against
It's a
another.
grind.
Yeah. Sparks are flying.
They are, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it goes back to what Chuck was saying today, communicating with one another.
Absolutely.
I mean, do you see that happening? How do you even get couples who are angry with one another to even come to the table and sit down?
Oh, yeah.
It again comes back to the whole idea of what is the desired result. You know, many
Okay.
times even for us, there's a checkpoint. If we find ourselves trying to state our rights or, you know, establish our ground or whatever, we try to remember in those moments to pull back and think, okay, what's the desired result? And most of the time that changes my behavior instantly because if I continue to go down the road that I was going down, then we're probably not going to have a good evening, as an example. Well, the desired result would be to have a nice, peaceful evening and be able to, you know, relax together, right?
Right.
So it's really that simple.
Right.
John Maxwell says that digging a 6-foot hole is easy, or excuse me, simple, but it's not easy.
Right.
And this is kind of one of those things. It's simple, but not necessarily easy,
Easy to do.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
And the more that people can truly live their design, right? It's instead of just living a disciplined life, like now I've got to serve, now I've got to try to put your needs before my needs. If
Right.
they can, as a couple, discover what that commonality, the common central purpose, why God created me for a purpose, created Greg for a purpose, and when we married, there's a common purpose for our marriage. And when we can discover what that is, then we live towards that. And we can, it's not just this discipline, it's inspired discipline.
Right. Wow. Good stuff. There may be someone watching today, guys, that they're on the verge of calling it quits and thinking that there's no coming back, there's no way to redeem this relationship, which first and foremost, nothing's impossible with God.
Right.
But for someone on that edge or close to that edge, what kind of advice would you give them? What one piece of advice would you give them?
Yeah, you know, I think you alluded to it before, that prayer can accomplish in a single moment what we could never accomplish. When we invite the power and the presence of God in our relationship, and we can live His purpose, we invite Him to do what we could never do if given a lifetime. Now, in a practical way, I think that, as Jesus said, the thief comes to kill, to steal, and to destroy, but He came that we might have life and have it abundantly. And so the more that we can invite His presence, the more that we can come together in that design that He has for us, the more that we can live full on and enjoy the life that God intended.
Well, Julie, I think we have about a minute left, but for a person who's watching or singles who are watching and need advice, what's the one piece of advice you would give to them before they start dating, even considering marriage? What's the one thing we should do?
The one thing that they should do is...
Me too.
Yeah.
I'm in that group.
You know, I think that it's so important to embrace and to celebrate who we are.
Okay.
It's important for us to celebrate one another as a couple. And I have to be comfortable in my own skin and who God designed me to be before I could ever be prepared to celebrate another person and to bring that person in a mix. So it's welcoming God. It's inviting Him. And as T.D. Jakes says, if you don't know what your purpose is, find your passion, because underneath of all of that, it'll point you to your purpose.
Wonderful. Well, we're going to have you guys back. We're not going to let you leave that easily today. So we'll have more of Greg and Julie Gorman on an upcoming episode of The Harvest Show. But to connect with Greg and Julie, you can go to gormanleadership.com. Go to harvest-tv.com. That's our website. We'll find you an easy way to link back to their site so you can pick up a copy of Two Are Better Than One. Coming up later, your prayer request. But up next, we're going to hear from Brian Bush from the Holy Land. We'll be right back.